Hello Internet, today I thought I would go through another problem involving solving equations with radicals. This particular problem comes from OpenStax Intermediate Algebra textbook, which is a fantastic textbook by the way. It's available for free. Check out the link in the description for more details. This particular problem is section 8.6, exercise 297. So with a problem like this or any similar type of problem, first thing we want to ask ourselves is the radical term isolated? In other words, is it just something involving a radical with no addition or subtraction in the same side of the equal sign? And the answer in this problem is no. There's a plus 2 that's being added to this radical term. So the first thing we want to do is move that extra piece to the other side so that we will, in other words, isolate this radical term. So I'll do that now. So square root of 4m plus 2. And I'm just going to write the original plus 2 equals 6. So the first thing we'll do is we will subtract 2 from both sides because we need to move this 2 to the other side of the equal sign. That will leave us with square root of 4m plus 2 equals 4. Okay, so now the next question is pretty much the same as the first question. Is this radical term isolated? Yes, it is isolated because there's nothing, it's not 3 plus this thing, it's not this thing plus 6 or something else. It's just this radical piece. So now the next thing that we will do is we need to figure out some way to get this algebraic expression out of the inside of this radical. And the tool to use to get that algebraic expression out of there is squaring both sides. And so that's what we'll do now. I think I already explained it in an earlier video, but let me just go back so you can see. This is kind of the generalization of the tool that we are about to use. Basically, if you take something that's a square root of stuff and you square it, what you'll end up with is just the stuff, because the square will unroot the root, basically. And you'll just be left with stuff. So let's go back here. So basically what we're going to do at this point is we're going to square both sides. And that will leave us with, again, it's just going to be this algebraic expression here. There's not going to be any roots or anything else. Because this squaring unroots it. So we'll be left with 4m plus 2 equals whatever 4 squared is. 16, I do believe. Let's check that. You can always check stuff on your calculator, no problem doing this. Alright, so that is in fact 16. Okay, so now the next step is we need to isolate this term containing m, or the term containing the variable, whatever your variable is. Mine is m, but if it doesn't necessarily have to be. Anyway, so we got to isolate this 4m. So the way to do that is we've got this 2 being added to this 4m. And so in order to undo that addition, we need to subtract the 2. And what we do to one side, we obviously have to do to the other. So what we'll be left with is 4m, because we subtracted 2 from this side of the equation. So there's no longer that 2, it's just the 4m. And then we'll be left with 16 minus 2, which is 14, I do believe. Okay, so now let me move this up here. And we will have... that's a terrible m. 4m equals 14. Okay, so now the goal here is to isolate m. But what's being done to m? Well, it's being multiplied by 4, because unless there's some kind of other symbol between a number and a letter, a variable, there's assumed to be multiplication if it's just right up against there. So what's the opposite of multiplication? In other words, undoing the multiplication, well, that's division. So we divide both sides of the equation by 4. And we will be left with just an m here because, actually let me write that up a little bit higher because I'm going to need this space for checking. But anyway, so we're going to be left with m here, and then 14 divided by 4, I'm not sure if I can do that in my head, but it might not come out evenly. So 14 divided by 4. Okay, it doesn't come out evenly, but I'm going to give it back as an improper fraction, which is probably the way that your answer is going to want it. It might take to 3.5, it might not. Depends on what your answer wants the answer to look like, or what your system wants the answer to look like if you're using an electronic one. So my answer gives me 7/2. So I'm going to go 7/2. I'm going to call this the answer. Now, the question is, and always ask yourself this as soon as you're done with any kind of math problem, is, number one, does your answer the question? This question asked us to solve it. Yes, we got a value for the solution. We got m equals 7/2. Does your answer make any sense? Yes, it does seem to make sense. However, in the context of this particular problem, or this particular type of problem, we used a tool that can rip off negative signs, namely squaring both sides of an equation. So we always have to check to make sure that when we plug our answer, or answers if we got multiple, if we plug this back into the original, we have to make sure that that ends up giving us a true statement. Otherwise, this isn't an answer. So let's do that now, just as a quick check. So square root of 4 times 7, oops, that's not what I meant to write, 7/2 plus 2 plus 2, does that equal 6? And I'm not going to go through all of the work of checking that manually, but I will put it in the calculator just to see. So 4, 7/2, and we got plus 2 in there, plus 2. So does 6 equal 6? That's the question. Yes, in fact it does. So therefore, because we got a true statement here, that proves that this value that we got out of our original work is in fact the answer to this problem. Alright, I think that is all for this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If so, please like and subscribe. Also, consider hiring me as your tutor. I would be happy to help you with stuff like this. For more on that, check out my website at www.tutoringbyroger.com. Thanks again for watching, and have a great rest of your day.